So when I was young, the first map that I learned how to draw was the map of Africa, the continent. And I remember that somewhere in the middle, there was a country or a region called Zaire. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Or are you too young?
Zaire. Oh,
Yeah, because there's no Zaire now.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I
it's a
remember
DRC
that.
now. Anyway, I mean, obviously, before I was born, the first democratic president of this region was Patrice Lumumba. And then, obviously, the Belgians killed him, dissolved his entire body in acid. And that place, it's kind of like the Middle East. There's always been war. And the reason for that is because it is super rich in everything. Minerals, agriculturally, etc. and so on. In fact, just last week, Mbali Tetani reported on a story about Bill Gates being awarded some mining contracts over there. Do you remember that story, Mbali?
I remember now.
Yes. So they're going out there and I think they're mining for cobalt. They're mining for a lot of things that they use, obviously, for technology. And most of it comes from the DRC. There's also a lot of copper over there that you can find. There's also a lot of gold over there. There's diamonds over there. And there's always been speculation that the CIA deliberately destabilizes that region so that they can have control over it. In fact, if you remember again, maybe 3 months ago, the representative from the DRC government that went to the US and the president, Donald Trump, was bragging about, I guess, brokering a peace deal in the region. And in exchange, they were given access to minerals there as the US.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? It was over, I think, $1 trillion or something like that worth of mineral contracts. So things like these happen quite a lot.
Yeah.
The president right now in the DRC is Tshisekedi, right? He was preceded by, how can his name escape me now? It'll come back to me just now, right? And that person whose name I forget now, this is funny, is currently in the DRC, but in Goma, right? Because him and Tshisekedi seemingly do not get along, right? And so there's a rebel faction called M23. And again, whether or not you believe it, some people believe M23 is formed in support by the CIA, and they work with the guys in Kigali, and obviously the Rwandan government has been helping them overthrow Tshisekedi, right? I don't know if that's true or not. But what I will tell you is that if you are called a rebel group to the point where you fight with our soldiers, South African army soldiers, then you should not be seen as a friend of ours, right?
Sure.
Now, this is what happens this weekend. The Mbeki Foundation has what they called a Continental Peace Summit. And they invited various stakeholders to this peace summit, including the government of the DRC, who then turned down the invitation. But they invited the spokesperson of M23 as well, right? Well, when the spokesperson came through, and I suppose maybe came through with a couple of rebels, they then gave a statement talking about they don't understand why the government turned down the invitation. Joseph Kabila is the guy that I was thinking about, by the way. Yes. Anyway, so Kabila is still at large and is alive. At some point, he was even hiding in South Africa. So anyway, the government of the DRC didn't come through, but the rebels came through. But what makes this even more alarming is that Ronald Lamola, right? He himself, who's the Minister of International Relations in the country, was unaware that M23 rebels were in the country. Now think about that. These rebels have previously engaged in combat with South African army forces, right? So you can then assume that in terms of where we stand as a country, we don't see eye to eye with them. They get invited to the country, they gain access to a country, and the officials of the country are none the wiser. Am I the only one that sees a problem with this?
It's a big problem.
No, it's not alleged. They definitely came.
They were here.
No.
The only thing that's
as in they don't know. That is the alleged.
Yeah, the only thing, okay, fine. Let me go with that. Let's say they did know and they're lying. Why are they lying? That's even more problematic to me. I mean, hold on. So do you remember that we did a story about a month and a half ago about Zuma going to Morocco?
Yeah.
And that was an unsanctioned visit. And he was speaking as if he's representing the government,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For me, this is right up there with that. When a former president can invite rebels to a country, and again, officials don't know.
Hence, I say for me, it sounds highly alleged because if you're going to have a peace summit that is being, presided over by the former president, and there are rebel leaders there, there is no way that the former president would have had rebel leaders in the country without anybody else knowing. So hence, for me, that sounds like a big, it's alleged that you didn't know. It doesn't make sense, right? But at the same time, if you are going to have a peace summit, we know that Thabo Mbeki has always been one for African unity.
Yes.
So if you are going to want to foster some form of peace on the continent, it only goes without saying that you would have some of the big players. And unfortunately, M23 becomes one of those big players in terms of unrest on the continent. So it only makes sense to have them at the table.
Since when are we negotiating with rebel groups and terrorists now? Let me just ask that.
I'm going to come in here and I must say that we do know that the war in the DRC has been going on for quite some time. We even lost our own soldiers, I think about 17, right? Earlier this year in Goma.
Killed by M23.
Yes.
I must stress.
Yes. And I mean, when you look at the peace negotiations which have been underway, I mean, there are peace negotiations that were held by Qatar. There were ones that were also held by the Washington, D.C., which is the U.S. But at the same time, the question around the M23 rebels not being brought to the table has always been a major red flag. Because how do you foster peace in a region which is so conflict-ridden that you don't bring the M23 rebels to the table, which has been a major, problem. So now I know that bringing them here is also a major issue, but they have not been included in some of these peace negotiations, which does not foster peace for the DRC.
I can't get involved in diplomatic issues locally in the DRC. Those people know what's going on in their country better than any one of us ever will.
True.
So I don't know anything about that. Here's what I do know. M23 are rebels. They are not democratically elected. They are currently trying to take over the government. Why are you negotiating with people like that? Those are not legitimate leaders.
Whether they're legitimate leaders or not, if you want to have legitimacy in terms of democracy and leadership and whatnot, you have to bring them to the table. How else do I say that you must stop doing that if I'm not bringing you to the table, trying to find out first, why are you doing this and why you've been doing this for so long? Who is funding you? I need to understand where you are coming from so that we have a way to move forward.
Let me explain why that's a problem, right? Because you're saying then any day, even here in this country, and I start causing unrest, you guys are going to bring me to the table to discuss.
But isn't that
That's what you say.
Isn't that what we always advocate for? You must go to therapy so that we find out. Isn't that a form of
Not
therapy?
when it comes to matters like this, guys.
But this has been going on for so many years that it is beyond you just going in there guns blazing. At some point, you have to sit down and talk.
Very, very dangerous rhetoric. Very, very dangerous stance even. But let us know what your thoughts are. Do you feel like the Mbeki Foundation was right to invite M23? And do you think this was done without the knowledge of our current government?